And that's why they call it the happiest place on earth. What's going on, everybody? This is the Cover Band Confidential Podcast, the podcast for cover band musicians and band leaders to learn how to rock more and suck less in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm Adam Johnson.
In Greensboro, North Carolina, I'm Dan Ray.
Freshly back from Disney.
That's right.
The drive was absolutely horrendous on the way home. Made it like just painful to the absolute bitter end. But got home last night around 8 o'clock, trying to reset, almost put away, but, you know, feeling good about it.
Yeah, overall, a great trip. We recapped it pretty thoroughly for the patrons just now. So those of you who are on the Patreon, you can hear all about Disney if you care to. And if you don't, then don't bother.
Yeah, so this will be a free episode for everybody. And I might post the video version of it on my personal YouTube channel just because not really a part of what we do here. But I know that there's some overlap. I mean, the fact that Dan and I overlap on this thing shows that there's probably some folks out there that want to hear about it. So,
for sure. And you were looking for some kind of news about Disney musicians and how all that works. You didn't land any news about that?
Yeah, it ended up not panning out. We ended up getting a comment on last week's episode on Spotify. One of our listeners who's reached out before, a duo called Gilly and the Girl, they both have done work in the parks, but they were performing on a cruise this week, so they weren't around. So that might be something that we kind of line up later on just to, you know, get the information. And
I'm still curious about it.
Definitely saw a lot of music.
Yeah.
There was actually an 80s band called the M80s that were playing the Garden Festival. Didn't get a chance to catch them just because of our scheduling. And then A Simple Plan was playing Friday night and all this weekend. So
yeah.
But again, if you want to know anything about that, check out this week's bonus episode or go over to my YouTube channel. I'll put a link in the show notes if that's something that you want to check out. But that's pretty much it. Not a whole lot else going on just because we've been gone. I loved this week's episode conversation you had with our buddy there, Mark.
Yeah, it was pretty great. Word on the street is that the Friday rehearsal went really well. We had a tape of it doing Seven Nation Army get posted into the Slack, and it was good. And I have some notes, but good. Yeah, very excited to have it back and hear about next steps.
Yeah. So this is going to be kind of a long-term project where we'll check in every now and then. And they seem totally game to let us kind of be a part of that process.
He cleared it with the whole crew, and they're all open to coming on and talking with us sometimes. And yeah, everybody's sort of open to the world having input on their little project there, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. So yeah, I love the fact that I can listen to the show and just enjoy it as a consumer.
Yeah.
Anytime I get a chance to do that is great. It was the backdrop as we were kind of packing things up and wrapping up the trip. So it was a good one to have.
Good.
Other than that, not a whole lot going on. And we wanted to get into a topic that I think we were mulling over and a bit hesitant to talk about for a number of reasons. But it just kind of, as we're looking at this show and this channel, the topic that we're going to get into affects us directly and affects you guys directly as well.
Yes.
And so it was something that we weren't going to be able to not at least say something about.
Yeah. And we're going to have to, we've done as good a job as we've ever done at avoiding the whole politics thing on this podcast, and we're going to do that here too. This is not a political conversation; it's just a business conversation.
Yeah, because in our circumstances, this affects our business, and it affects your business to some degree as well. So, we are going to talk about tariffs, how they impact us as musicians and consumers, and how it affects the companies that we happen to be patrons or fans of. So, if you are in the gear world, you know that other folks have already done videos about this. Former NAMM House buddies Landon Bailey and Henning Pauly dropped their videos this week. Rat Shull dropped his last week. And just kind of talking through how this is going to impact specifically guitar companies, but because we are a bit of a wider net in regards to the kind of gear that we talk about and the kind of things that we get into, it is bigger than that. It's not just, guitars, amps, and pedals and dealing with components. there's way more to this than just pricing. And I think it's a hard thing to kind of wrap your head around as far as what and how it's going to impact people, because we think a lot about, imported stuff. So companies like Schecter and Ibanez and, other companies that manufacture offshore.
Behringer.
Oh yeah. I mean, tons and tons and tons. But the thing this is affecting American companies as well, because the cost of doing everything just went up.
Yeah. It's not just the finished product. Components are almost all sourced overseas too.
Yeah.
So even if it's assembled in America, probably its parts were shipped in.
Well, but even if every single main component is built in America, because I did just a cursory search, and you could 100% build a guitar that is 100% made in America, all the components. It can be done.
Yep.
And it's not necessarily prohibitively expensive to do so. But the things that you have to take into consideration is, what about the wire? What about the cardboard boxes that the guitars are shipped in? What about the cases? Most cases are not made in the States. What about the light bulbs that are in the assembly factories? What about the paper and the printer ink and just all of the stuff that it takes to run any sort of business like this? If this goes into effect, it's going to cause the cost of everything to go up. And we are no exception as far as, industries go. And we ultimately know that when the cost of everything goes up, the opportunities for performing go down.
Yes.
Because when there's less margin, entertainment is the first expendable thing to go. And so, that can look like a lot of stuff. It can look like fewer inquiries, which we have definitely been kind of touting.
Yes.
And the opportunities that are available are probably lower pay. So, it's just going to be an issue for everybody for the foreseeable future. And even though these things haven't taken effect yet, or they'll start taking effect and they'll get undone and there's a 90-day delay or whatever, the pricing's already been changing. I've got folks...
No, it's priced into all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, but specifically for guitar stuff. I have seen some price tags that have been put up on social media where it's an American-made guitar that retails for a certain amount of money, and then the price goes up, but then it's on sale. And so you're getting a discount for a guitar that 2 weeks ago cost one price and now costs $100 more than it did
on a discount,
but is on sale.
Well, that's another thing we're going to see. I mean, you noticed how many things went up in price because of COVID supply chain disruptions and then never came back down, even though the supply chain got fine. We're going to see all that again too. Companies are going to use this as an opportunity to test new upper bounds of what they can charge, and then that'll be the new price.
Yeah,
that's going to happen.
Talking about it, not talking about it, getting into it, not getting to it, it doesn't really matter. It's coming, and whether it ends up working out as a net benefit for whoever stands to benefit from this doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. And, it's going to change a lot of stuff for what we do as well. Because as I had mentioned a couple of weeks ago, there's some reviews and stuff that I'm in the process of making. And the way that content creators tackle these kinds of products is going to be different. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to see less product reviews, but you're probably going to see more long form reviews. So not necessarily like a 5-minute, here's what it does, here's how it sounds. Probably a lot, because the investment in whatever it is you're purchasing is so significantly higher than it would be. The amount of time and research and thoroughness of your buying experience will permeate into the kind of stuff that's being made in terms of
Interesting. I hadn't thought about that. People need more information to make a more a higher stakes buying decision.
Right. So
interesting.
I think what you'll see is typically when we do a scripted style product review, whatever, they clock in around 3 to 5 minutes because we're just trying to hit the high points and show the cool thing. That might get a little more granular. Get further into the weeds.
Do you think that product manufacturers' spend on that sort of thing will go up?
No, I could pretty confidently say it won't. Mostly because just in this particular industry, the pricing that they put into content in content creator reviews is lower than most other industries.
So there's going to be a price per effort squeeze on content creators.
Yeah. And I don't know if it'll necessarily, the cost or the pricing for paid reviews will change, but I think because everybody is realizing that there is a constraint on resources, that the number of them may decrease, the amount may stay the same, but the expectations may be higher on the creator end.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a much more involved situation than just base costs going up. I think you're going to see changes in a lot of other ways beyond just this is more and the reviews are coming in either way. Because you're gonna have to buy stuff. Strings and pedals and cables, and a gig comes up, you've got to get a particular kind of guitar. Now, it may mean that you don't look for new gear and you're looking in the secondhand market, but the secondhand market is also going to be affected by this.
No, if there's new demand in secondhand market, that brings those prices up, and it makes it so that, last time I bought a car was right in the heat of that. There are no used cars anymore because for a while we weren't building any new cars. And so there was a big dip in the used market. And when I was shopping, it cost the same to buy a car that was 4 years old versus one right off the factory line. And so that was what I ended up doing. It's going to be the same kind of thing here. There'll be a real boom of demand in the used market that will have knock-on effects across the rest of the market.
Yeah.
So that's certainly coming too.
The way that this is going to happen is it's going to feel like what we're talking about isn't happening for a while. Yeah. Because what companies are currently doing is they are ramping up production and shipping things as fast as they can to get in under the wire. And they will continue to sell at whatever price they can get for as long as possible before raising those prices. But it is a means to an end. It's going to, at some point, inventory is going to dry up and the other parts of this kind of situation are going to take hold.
Yes.
And it's just a matter of time.
Yeah. I think the other thing to think about, we touched on it just a minute ago, is if the macroeconomic environment leads to a drying up of opportunities for bookings, how do we as performers adapt to that? How do we survive in that? And one thing that's obvious to me is people who have the ability to slim down their offering and its cost will have opportunities that they can do that. If you insist that you have to be a 12-piece, you may struggle. But, if I can replace a band on a Saturday night with an acoustic plus a fiddle and a cajon or something, and bring the price that way down for a lesser offering, but still something, I probably can carve out some opportunities for myself that way.
Yeah. I had mentioned I had seen a solo musician playing to backing tracks. It sounded like a jam zone situation. Like it was more than just like a drum beat or whatever. It had some other components to it. And the prevalence of that may start to go up. And if you already have that membership and you're paying for it and it's something that you are comfortable doing, you may want to start mentioning that or putting it out into your promo stuff that is an option. I don't think it's the ideal solution, but I think it is a means to an end. I think it is a stopgap solution for people who are looking to work more and offering something that is a differentiator beyond just guy by themselves, even somebody who loops, like the fullness of that sound is definitely something worth, a venue or restaurant or bar considering as far as entertainment goes, because it gives the end experience is better for better or worse. And I know that it pains musicians to say that less personnel is a better option, but we don't necessarily have the ability to make those calls all the time.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to be potentially here in a position where the market's going to have some demands on us that we're going to have to adapt to.
Yeah.
And that's just the reality.
Yeah. I mean, don't think of the fact that bringing a keyboard player in, which is something that I've really been enjoying and just love the contribution and the look and the dimension of that. And then having to look at what's available and realizing that in order to make the numbers work, either everybody has to take home less or we have to turn work down. That's tough. As a business owner, I'm struggling with that conversation, that situation. It's happening. It's happening right now. And just trying to figure out what the best path forward is,
Yep.
Whatever ends up happening, whatever thing we end up facing, just go into it with your eyes open and know that stuff is going to change. And whether you like it or not, the only thing that you have control over is your whatever finances that you have to invest in whatever that you're looking to do as far as your business goes and your band and your gear, and what you can offer vendors as a product in the meantime that might be able to hit more competitive price points.
Right.
I don't necessarily love ending an episode on a note like this, but
no,
it's just kind of, it is what it is.
Yeah. And we're going to, I'm reading things about how if those things really go into effect, here's the result. If they don't, here's the result. And none of it's good. Even if, at this point, even if they don't, there's been enough burned goodwill that perhaps the global economy starts to sidestep America entirely at some point. There's a lot of opinion pieces floating around that seem pretty dire.
Yeah, and the other thing that we need to be aware of is that a lot of these American companies that you think are these monoliths are like 3 to 12 people all in.
Yeah, right.
And so, Fender and Gibson and Roland aside, you've got a lot of companies that, it's a full-time salary for less than 5 people, and all of this is going to affect them. It's affecting U.S. jobs, it's affecting U.S. products, and the perception of American products outside of America is also being impacted by this, unfortunately. Right. And it's got nothing to do with the quality of the product, the people who make it, or any of that stuff. It's just when a trade partner becomes hard to work with, most countries are going to look elsewhere.
Yeah. And foreign consumers look elsewhere, right? It's not even, doesn't have to happen at the level of policy. It's just buying decisions.
Yeah. I hope that whatever impact there is, it is as minimal as possible. But one thing I know for sure is we've been through stuff like this. We've been through pretty bad stuff, and we managed to get on the other side of it. And I don't think it's going to be a situation where Dan and I are like, well, we're closing in on year 2 and not much
Still
going on
to talk about. Yeah.
But here's the TV shows that we've been watching. So, it's not, it's not complete.
How's your sourdough doing?
Yep. It's not complete doom and gloom, but this is a business podcast as much as it is anything else. And this is going to affect business. So,
yes.
Keep your head on a swivel and just be prepared. And know that, whatever comes out of it, we'll make do, but it may just not be, it may not be the year that you anticipated. I know it sure isn't for us.
Yep.
And we'll just leave it at that, I guess.
Turns out it's a good year to have foot surgery.
Yes. interestingly enough.
Yeah.
If this has already started impacting you, let us know about it. Coverbandconfidential@gmail.com. If this ends up being the repository for whatever hate mail that is coming our way, it's same address. We didn't want to make this as much as some of y'all may not want to listen to it, but it would be very stupid and ignorant of us to just ignore it, because you just can't.
Right.
So we're gonna do what we got to do, and we can come back next week with something a bit different, but that's where we're gonna leave it this week. In Atlanta, Georgia, I'm Adam Johnson.
In Greensboro, North Carolina, Dan Ray.
You've been listening to the Cover Band Confidential podcast for the week of April 18th, 2025.